Hi, Dr. Bob Flower, and this is your Friday, February 24th Master Pattern Report, brought to you over TV International. Okay, so today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to address a very serious issue, gun control, gun violence, and we're going to do it in a format that we use here under natural intelligence. So we're going to show you how one of the many applications of natural intelligence in this, and see how the end result impacts yourself. Okay, so let's start. All right, the first thing we're going to look at here is what we call the human factor. Okay, the core human factor, and that is it's called A plus B equals C. Awareness plus belief will always equal the current expression, what's going on right now. All right, so what we want to do is we want to fill in these three areas as best as possible, because this is where the answer always lies. Trust me, 37 years. This is where the answer always lies somehow, okay? So we know what the current expression is: gun violence, gun control, death in the schools, kids being murdered in the schools, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the awareness factor, or focus, and the belief factor, addressing our organizational principles, which are here, and we'll go through them, and then we're going to address them in the perspective of what we call action, the action vehicles: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Okay, so here we go. All right, so let's look at, let's take our awareness to laws. All right, so we have plenty of laws on the books, and we want to add more laws now to stop killing in our schools. However, here's the problem, and let's focus in on the Florida issue. Did our laws fail us here? Well, there's a question of yes and no. The laws were fine. What happened was 2 instances of the FBI failed. They dropped the ball. The sheriff's office was notified several times. So we had the sheriff, he was involved several times. There was a social worker who examined this boy earlier, within the 6 months, and she said he does not represent any problem. So we had several issues here. So you got the FBI, you got the sheriff, and you got a social, right? So we went through the process here. Plus in addition to that, there were numerous reports concerning this kid's behavior. So we're just going to say the public, okay? His fellow students, teachers, whatnot. So it's not like the laws weren't being followed here. They were. It's just that what happened was the process, the application of the laws failed us. So we're going to put a negative here for application. And I would add to you, I would submit to you that, just as an aside, the financial collapse back in 2007 and 2008, there again, the laws were in place. The regulators were not applying themselves. Okay? We're starting to get a picture here. All right. Now next, we have to look at what is the priority here? What priorities are we dealing with? Well, we have control issues. We have the Rifle Association, NRA. I'm sorry, NRA. Okay. As for instance. So, what priorities are we looking for here? Well, aside from control in the NRA, what a lot of focus is on the AR-15 assault rifle. People say, well, it's very easy to get. Well, that may be the case because guns, rifles, and shotguns are easy to get. That's the nature of the country. So how does that fit here? Well, if you want to change that, then you have to change the Constitution of the country. And chances are that's not going to happen. Right? And by the way, the AR-15 only looks like an assault rifle. Any of your automatic weapons are much more dangerous. If you take a Browning automatic, they call it a semi-automatic, and it comes in caliber .308 and .30-06, those are much more destructive. You don't get wounded with those things, right? The AR-15 is a .223 caliber, and hey, it kills people. There's no two ways about it. But it's not nearly as powerful as some of your other hunting rifles. So, you know, there's a big issue here. So, what is our priority? Well, let's look at trying to solve this. The priority here is teachers. Teachers armed. Right now, the teachers, a lot of teachers are fighting this. And I can understand it, and that's fine. That's fine. But all you need in a school is 2 or 3 teachers out of maybe 40, 50, or 60, or 20 to be in this situation. So that's one possibility. The other is a routine patrol. Okay? In other words, you don't station a policeman there, but like maybe, you know, once a day they come by, or maybe just every other day they come to and they stay at the school for a while. So, I mean, those are possibilities, all right? The other is to have a professional armed guard. So let's just put in here professional guard. And by the way, if you're going to use teachers, they should be volunteer teachers who are willing to do this, take on this responsibility, and they should be paid extra for it. You know, $5,000, $10,000 a year extra, maybe $15,000 a year extra, right? Cheap, considering what we're dealing with here, right? Or you hire a professional guard, and I'm not talking about somebody that's, you know, 68 years old and 350 pounds. I'm talking about somebody who's doing it as part-time job, you know, policeman, you know, former Army Ranger or something like that, as a part-time job. That's where we're going with this. Now, priority is very important for this reason. Some of the politicians are making the point that the reason why they're considering going this route here is because of the timing involved. So again, priority, timing comes into play here. We'll call time. In several of these these killing instances in schools, it's all occurred within 6 or 7 minutes. It takes, on average, about 10 minutes, and that's pretty quick, for police authorities to respond. And then they have to understand what the situation is here, okay? So it's critical to have somebody there. And let's talk about it. Let's go back to laws and process here. With the Florida situation, don't forget, there was a deputy on site who had been trained and been paying extra for protecting these kids. So I'm going to put it in here, deputy who did not do his job. He did not go in. He did not address it. So once again, you know, you can pass all the laws you want. If you have situations like this, I misspelled deputy, okay. If you have situations like this with poor application, it doesn't matter. And further, timing is a critical factor here. And I don't know of any laws that you can have. I mean, you could take every single AR-15 off the planet of the earth. You think it's going to change anything? Slow it down? How about here's a factor, and this goes under feedback. I'm going to come back to this, but under feedback, I asked a demolition expert that I know, who was a demolition expert in the Army, and who now works in construction demolition. I asked him, how easy or how difficult would it be to make a bomb if you wanted to? He said, Robert, he says, it's almost easier than getting an AR-15. He said, because what you do is, he says, you go out and you get a can, like a tomato can. You throw it with some sort of explosive. It could be gunpowder, it could be fertilizer. They're very easy to find. They're almost household, right? You throw that in the can, you throw in screws and nails and bolts, you know, and you put in a fuse, and you've got something that's powerful, and it's going to work. I said, how much damage is something like that? He showed me like an 8-ounce can filled with nails and screws and things of that sort. He said, you know, if you threw one of them in a classroom of 30 kids, he says the chances are that the fatalities are going to be at least half, and you're going to have most of those kids hurt. He says, and they're not going to be hurt, they're going to be maimed. He says, so this kid went into 4 classrooms plus the hall. So imagine if he walked in there with 5 or 6 bombs in his bag, which are, you know, not hard to carry, lit them and threw them into 4 classrooms. The devastation there would have been, you would have had fatalities over 100, and God knows what kind of maiming or whatnot you could have had. So if you get up, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get to the feedback. So the feedback here is the gun itself, okay, and then the age restriction, right? This is a big one. These are 2 big ones, and they're valid up to a point. The gun could be a regular semi-automatic hunting rifle, and it could be a .22. It doesn't have to be an AR-15. Maybe it's not going to kill so many people, but it's sure going to do, you know, it's going to be effective. And the age of the individual, look, you live in a country where there are guns. And when you look at what other countries are doing, you say, well, why here and not there? Well, for instance, Switzerland and Iceland have open gun laws. It's virtually mandatory that people have guns. Those two countries in the past 75 years, been one murder. Why? Why one murder there and they have open gun laws and not here? Well, now we're getting down into this area over here, into the mental part, right? But we're also getting into the belief part, concepts, because kids here have different concepts than kids there. They're not addressed as to their concerns, like old-fashioned Swiss values and Icelandic values, and the problems are not being so the feedback on the kids problems, let's put in here kid problems, is negative, not being addressed. The belief system, the culture is askew, right? So let's go on to details, and we're putting this whole picture together. So what are the details, the parts involved in this? Well, everything that you have here is part of the picture. And everything that goes here would have to do with stopping the madness. How many more issues are you going to raise to prevent this from happening? I think we're addressing just about everything. There may be one or two other types of corrections, but the details that we're missing are here. The process, the application, the laws are not being applied, and the procedures are not being applied. That's what failed here. It wasn't a failure of the gun lobby. It was a failure to carry out the laws, and it's totally unrealistic to think. Again, unless you eliminate the Second Amendment, there's no way. And even if you did, you'd probably have a greater issue insofar as killings are going. So these are things that need to be looked at and taken into the whole picture. We're going to get into the action part over here. So the entire picture that we're looking at here is one of awareness or focus. Let me call it over here, focus, and then culture. You say, well, we have a gun culture. Yes, we do. We have, okay. So we have a gun culture here, and we have a no gun culture. Right. But what we don't have is training. We don't have teaching. We don't have addressing problems. We don't have working with the kids so that they don't adapt, that they don't have that open-mindedness that video games, let's put that down here, video and movies have on their thinking. There is very little over here, very little value being placed on life. Needs to be, the culture and the focus needs to be revamped. Okay, so now let's get over here and let's see what we're looking at on this part over here. So we partially addressed the mental. So you got mental illness here. Is one of the factors. Okay? This kid didn't have mental illness. I'm sorry. He may have lost his mind, but this kid was pretty clever in the way he set this whole thing up. All right? This was a hate or an ignorance rather than a mental illness. And besides, when you start addressing this, who's to say? Because somebody goes out one day and they lose their temper, they're going to be banned for life from owning a gun? Because if they want to, again, get out the old tomato can and you got damage, right? Or a car, like they're doing now. Well, here as well. Okay, so you got mental illness, and then you have the mindset of we've got too many guns, and again, we may have too many guns, but it's like playing bridge. Okay, if you're dealt a terrible hand, you don't bid, you keep quiet, and you play the hand as best you can. Well, something as serious as this is the same thing. Got to learn by what's going on here. And what's going on here is not as superficial as to say, put more controls. The more controls you put on something, the more it explodes. Okay? There is nothing, I look at this, others have looked at this. There is nothing. There is no law that could have stopped this from happening. None. The application was very poor. Very poor. So the mindset is critical. The mindset not only of what we're teaching the kids, or we're not teaching them, insofar as awareness and culture are concerned, and life, the value of life, okay? So I'm going to put in here life, right? Because when you look at Chicago and you look at how many people are murdered there and in other murder capitals, you could pretty well tell we're not getting a value of life here, okay? All right, so physically, again, there are too many guns. It could be. But you're not going to eliminate that. That's not going to happen. You're going to take it out of the hand. You can say, well, we're going to take it out of the hands of 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds or 16-year-olds. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to take it out of the hands of law-abiding kids or people. You're not going to take it out of the hands of criminal. And that's the other main factor here. The guns are not being taken out of evil. You pass the laws that you're taking away from good people. Okay? Obvious. So, physically, we need school protection. And that goes back to over here, where we're talking about priorities, right? These are things, and you have to consider this, because again, the most important thing here is the time factor, right? The politicians who are saying that, look, it doesn't matter what restrictions you put on. And okay, you put on more restrictions, but what good is it if it takes 4 to 6 minutes to commit, mass murder, and you can't respond immediately, all right? So I'm just trying to emphasize where the priorities should be that we're not looking at, and certainly the time is one of them. The mental part is another. The cultural part is critical. All right. So now we get down to our good friend emotion. All right. Response that we're getting is in these instances is so emotional that you're chasing away your lawmakers. They're being more objective than the public is. So they're looking at these things like, these are people that are obviously upset for good reason, but they're not thinking logically, and you're not. So it's all emotion. It's all subjectivity, right? And that presents a problem in itself, because when you act emotionally, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss things, such as timing, dealing with evil, looking at this, how are we going to stop evil people, not how are we going to stop the American public. You're looking at evilness here. Even, consider this, during the 30s, when gangsters were running wild with machine guns in the streets, even they didn't conduct acts of violence like this. In the 50s, when I was growing up, kids never even tried to get guns, never even considered it. Why? Because of the culture at that time. You say, well, times have changed. Well, look, if times have changed for the worse, then that's the bad change. You want to make times change for the better, not for the worse. So if it worked then, bring back those values. And we're not. We're not. Okay? So here, mistakes because of emotional reaction. Okay? Now, let's look at the answer. Spirit. Okay? And when I talk about spirit, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about this power that we all have, that we don't understand and we misuse, right? There's such a thing as evil spirit, as well as there is of beneficial spirit, good spirit. This has to be understood, because this is the thing that eviscerates a situation, a kid, right? And notice that these killers are all boys. I think there was only, no, they're all boys, right? So there's something in the male psyche up here, awareness and a belief, that's not working right. That needs to be dealt with. That's where we need to be more aware, and we need to have better concepts of dealing with kids, right? Teaching them values. And by the way, just as an aside, as a coincidence, when these mass killings really started to occur? After they took prayer out of schools, shortly after. And after they stopped demanding that kids pledge allegiance. Concepts. Belief systems. You weaken the belief system, what the hell do you expect? There's rebellion, and I'm telling you that this is something that goes through the ethers, goes through the air, that you don't see, that's affecting you. that's affecting these kids. And sometimes it affects them in violent ways. Okay. This is the answer. The answer is understanding the internal power that we all have, this energy. And this energy not only is internal to us, but it's throughout humankind. And it's sort of like when you walk into a room and you sense something about somebody, this is what's at work. All right? This needs to be connecting. It can be a connector. All right? Connector of different minds. Right. So I think we've covered almost everything but things of value. Is there anything else that we've left out? Can you think of anything that my audience over there, have you anything that, no? Just get rid of the AR-15s. That'll do it. That'll do it. That'll, right? Ready?
A test?
Test. A test? Yeah, test. I forgot about the test, yeah. So we got tests over here, right? Test is going to tell us nothing. Test. How does a test relate to evil intentions? How does a test relate to priority? And I'm going to put evil over here too. Because I may be a good guy today, but tomorrow, you piss me off, I may want to get my gun. Tests are not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you if somebody is mentally ill, fine. But that's still not the answer. That's not dealing with what's wrong. That's not dealing with preventing it from happening. All that's doing is telling you, well, we have a prospect here that maybe they're going to be killers. And then again, so we take the test, they fail the test. Okay? Let's take it from there. Is this going to help us? Is this situation going to help? If the sheriff, if the social worker, if the FBI, if the police department doesn't act, if over here they don't apply themselves, what the hell good is the test? How many tests do you think this kid went through, maybe not written, but how many tests did this kid go through with all of these indicators and nothing happened? Nothing happened. The teachers, his fellow students, other parents, the sheriff's office, the social services, the FBI. I mean, what do we need? CIA in here? How many more times, how many more warnings, how much more feedback needed to be generated before things would have changed? And it doesn't matter because, again, it wasn't the application. We fell apart. We fell apart. The whole system fell apart on us. So they're looking at, wow, the NRA and the politicians, bull. Here's where it happened. This is what happened. This guy comes in and confronts that guy. Even if he doesn't kill him, he stops him. He didn't do it. And this guy's making $100,000 a year, and he's trained. Okay? To say nothing about the social worker who said, this boy is no harm. What good is a test? I mean, there's a test. Maybe it's not a written test, but there's somebody who's supposedly trained, a practitioner, and she's saying that, no, he's okay. So how is that an answer? Okay, so you make up your mind where you think things may be right or wrong, but when it comes to putting the entire picture together, you need to address all of this and probably more that I'm missing. But I certainly would like to hear from you about this, especially if there's something that I'm missing, so that we can readdress it again. Kid problems, very important, right? There's got to be more of an awareness of what's happening in the home and what's not happening. And there's got to be more awareness of the value, okay? Over here, virtue, which is also exhibited here. Virtue needs to be reintroduced into the environment, into the culture, into schools, and especially into the home. Okay? Can't allow kids to be totally unruly in a classroom. Can't be. Teachers need to be supported. Okay? I don't care what those assholes from the AACP or whatever they are, NAACP or not the NAACP, ASPCA or whatever, they need to be addressed. Okay? You can't have that. You got to back up the parents and especially the teachers in having more control over a classroom, right? So take a look at this, think about this, look at the whole process that we're using here. And again, this is a way of focusing. We also call this focus, same difference. But this is how, when you're addressing something under the natural intelligence format, it's like the dichotomous keys, only much better. What I'd like to do next week is do the same thing and address immigration, because I think that's a little simpler, and you'll see some stuff come out. Okay. One quick word on the market. Market is making a slow recovery here, back. Be careful, because I'm looking at a retracement again, perhaps as low as it was 2 weeks ago. So just be careful. If you're a short-term investor, be aware. If you're a longer-term investor, don't panic. Don't worry about it. If it does go down again, buy more. Okay? I hope you appreciate this. Let me hear from you. Have a good week, and we're going to address this model is thinking next week. Okay? Thanks. Have a great weekend.